Alright, welcome back to learning to program using Godot game engine. And this is part 2 of the CircleTap application or game. And in this one we're going to add our event so that when we click on the target something happens and our score goes up and our target goes away, and then we're going to look at making a particle system and we're going to play a sound. So let's start off by tackling the player click. So to do that, I need to add an event to this area 2 that I created, and so all I need to do is click on my target, my area 2D right here, go to node, and you'll notice down here I have a bunch of area 2D events, and the one I'm looking for is actually this one, which is an input event, and that means any kind of, like a key press or mouse tap or finger press, all those would happen on this. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to leave the defaults and connect. And here I need to do a little bit of complicated code, and you don't need to worry about this too much, but I'll explain it anyways so that it's hopefully helpful and makes sense to you. So we're going to access the, we're going to look at this event right here, object, and we're going to say if event is an input event mouse button. That's just saying if this is a mouse button event, and we're going to use the and Boolean operator, the event dot button index, which means which button was pressed, the middle button, the left button, or the right button, and we're going to say button left. So all this is saying is, is this a mouse event and was it the left mouse button? Alright, and what we're going to do here is there's several ways that we can, what we're wanting to do is we want to tell the main scene up here, we want to tell this script that the player clicked the target and got a point, and we may do some other things, but so there's multiple ways I can tell that object, that main node, from this node. So one way I could do it is I could set up a custom signal, and the signal would work just like this signal that we just created, or the timer signals, and I could connect to that. But I think the easiest way is just to use the get node. So I can use get node, and we've looked at accessing nodes above, or I should say below, where we're currently at. So currently I'm right here, and we've looked at looking at these nodes, but we've never looked at nodes above. And the way you can access that is by using the dot dot. So I can use dot dot, and that should access the parent node of this one. Another way is you can say get parent. That should also get my parent. And because we know that when I add a target, I'm always adding it right here as the child of main, so main should be the node that we're getting. So let's try this first just to see, and maybe we'll try the other method too to make sure that they both work. So I'm calling the parent, and I'm going to call a method on that, and so I'm going to call target clicked. Alright, now that method doesn't currently exist up here on main, and if I run this I'll get an error. Maybe we'll do that just for to see what happens. But I also need to delete this target so that the player can't click twice and get double points for the same target. So let's do Q free. Just like we did on the timer, this will delete this object when they click it. So let's run this, and if I click in time, oh, I get an error. It says non-existent function target clicked on base node main.gd. Alright, so we know that I'm running the right script, but I don't have that function. So let's create it. So func, and what did we call it? It was target clicked, right? And right here we'll just say print clicked. Alright, and this will be a good debug test to make sure that what we did is working. And there it is. So when I click the target, if I click down here I don't get anything, but if I click the target, when it pops up I get a message. That's excellent. That's exactly what we wanted. Let's try the other method. So we'll say get node, and inside the parentheses we'll create a string, and we'll just use 2 dots to indicate to go up instead of go up to the parent. And again, I get the same result. It works. So excellent. So you can use either get node or get node get parent. Either one will work. Get parent is probably actually a little cleaner looking, so let's put that back in. Alright, so this script is done. Our target is done for now, so let's close that. And here we are on the main scene. So next thing we want to do is we want to play a sound. So this is actually super easy, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to go back to our scene view, and we're going to create a new node called a audio. And there's several ones here. There's 2D, 3D, and just a regular audio stream player. We're going to use a regular audio stream player. A 2D you could use to play sound on one side of the screen versus another side of the screen, and it would play either out of the left speaker or out of the right speaker. In this case, we just want to play a sound, no matter which side it's coming out of. So I have my audio stream player, and over here I have a stream object, and what I want to do is I want to drag my wave file over there. Now if you get a sound file and it's a different format like OGG or MP3, if you have those different file formats, you can use a program called Audacity here. And I'll just load it up super quickly. And this program is capable of doing all kinds of recording and filtering effects, but it also can export. So you can import your file and then export the audio as a WAV file so that Godot can use it. Alright, so I've loaded up my sound file, and you can apply some things to it, but I'm going to leave it the way it is. But in order to play this, I need to give it a name, so I'm just going to call it audio pop, because it kind of makes a popping sound. And in order to play that, right here in my code, all I need to do is access that node, so get node audio pop, and I'm going to use the play method right there. So now if I play this and I click my target in time, I hear the pop sound. Awesome. Alright, so that was easy. So the next thing I need to do is I want to have a score, because currently I'm not making my score go up. So that's another easy one. Up here with my other variables, let's create a variable and we'll call it score. And we're going to start with 0. A score of 0. And all I need to do is when they tap the target correctly, I'm going to do score equals score plus 1. And all I'm saying here is score plus 1 is then assigned to the score value. And it knows that it needs to do this part first before it sets it there, so you won't get any kind of weird loop or something. I don't know what might happen, but that's how it's evaluated. So it'll be 0 plus 1 will be put into here, so 1 will be put into score the first time, and then the second time they click it, it'll go in again. Now I need to update my label, because remember we made this label right here, and we just called it label, so let's call it label score. That way it's easier to access from code. I'm going to save my scene, and so we'll get node again, we'll label score, and I'm going to set the text property, and I'm just going to set it to score. And then remember, if I just add score like this, I'll get an error because this is a number and this is a string, so I need to convert this to a string by using the str function. And so now this is now a string, and it will be stuck together with this, and so I should see my score go up when I click. So there, I've got 1, 2, and 3 points. Very good. So now let's make our final add-on to the game, we're going to make the particle system. So this is a little bit in depth, and but we'll give it a shot, and they're pretty fun to make. So we're going to make a new scene, just like what we did for our target. In this one, we're going to create a new node, and we're going to call it a particle 2D, right there. And this has lots of little adjustments that you can mess around with. So I'm going to refer to my notes so that we get something similar to what we did before. And the first thing I want to do is set the texture. So the texture is going to be our little particle here, right there. And emitting is on. And let's see. We don't want one shot because we want this to keep going. Process material, we're going to do a new particles material. And this is where we actually set a lot of the, and you notice it just came to life there, it's actually generating. This is where we can set a lot of different settings. So, let's see. Emitting, got that. One more thing I wanted to change up here was the lifetime. Let's change it to 2. That way they last a little bit longer. So notice they're dropping longer, or dropping further because they're living longer. And oops. One other thing, explosiveness. Let's set this to 0.9. So what this will do is they'll all spawn out at the same time, and they'll kind of fall out, and then we'll have to wait for the next ones. So that gives us more of an explosion type effect instead of a stream. Alright, so then under this process materials, this is where we're going to do some more of our settings. And so we're going to set the spread to 180, and I think we'll see that more in a minute. Oh, and the initial velocity, we're going to set this to 150, so this will make them really spray out. Alright, so what was this, 40? Yeah, so the 180 here allows it to kind of spray out in all directions. That's good, because we're trying to make that kind of a confetti explosion kind of look to it. So we're going to set the velocity rando to 1. That way some particles will come out slow and some will come out fast, and that'll give us the effect of some of them coming way out and then some of them just kind of dropping down. So we can change this angular velocity to 200, and that will make them kind of spin a little bit as they come out. And we'll make sure the rando on that is also 1, which means some of them will spin a lot, some of them won't spin at all. And let's see, the scale property. So here we can shrink them down a little bit. So this will scale all of them. And I could do a randomize here, so we could use like a 0.5. So now some of them will be a little bit smaller and some of them will be a little bit bigger. Not super important. But this is how you could adjust that if you wanted to. Let's see, what else do we have? Alright, so for the color, let's add a color gradient texture, and then we'll drill into that, and then we'll create a new gradient, and we'll drill into that. And then for the colors, we have under this indices, we have 2 different colors we can pick from. And then what we want to do is we want to leave this first one alone, but we want to change the second one to 0 alpha. And so you notice what's happening here now is they're spraying out like a solid color, and then as they fall away they disappear. Alright? We do want to change this one. Let's change it to like a bright yellow. That way it's more festive instead of... There we go, it's pretty bright there. Alright, so let's jump out of this one. Alright, so that's our colors, and let's see. I think the last thing we want to do, I think this is pretty good. I think the last thing we want to do is we're going to set up a timer, because particles don't know how to go away on their own. So we're going to set up a timer to kill it after it does its first initial spray. I was just looking at some of these other settings to see if any of them were interesting. So dampening would be, it would slow them down, so instead of falling kind of physically normal, they may kind of encounter some resistance, and you could add some resistance there. There's some orbital, some gravity. I think the gravity, so 98 on the Y direction, so this is kind of like a standard gravity, is set by default. Let's see, emission shape. So we could change it so that it emits from a box. So it's emitting from this whole box instead of just that point. You could also do a sphere with a different radius. So this might actually be useful in our case to make it feel like it was coming from the entire target instead of just from a single point. We'll put it back to point just to leave it. But these are fun little settings to play around with if you like. Alright, so let's come up here, and all this was fine. So let's add, we'll also turn on the one shot, which means it's not so great for watching it. Kind of want to leave it off when you're playing with it, but it's nice when, or we need it for when we play, that way we don't get a second set of particles from it. So what I'll do here is I'm actually going to rename this to party, or particles party. Right. And let's add a timer, and I also need a script on here, and we'll just leave that alone, delete all this, and on the timer, let's rename that to lifespan, just like we did on the other one, and we'll do a timeout, and we'll attach it with the normal, and we'll do that queue free, just like we did with the target. And I'm going to save this scene as particles party. Alright, so as you remember, in order to spawn the target scene, so what we're going to do is when you click, we're going to spawn a target, or we're going to take the place where the target was, and we're going to spawn a new particle system right there. And so just like we did with the target, we need a reference to that particles party T scene. So I'm going to call it the particles scene. And I'm going to use the preload, and I'm going to scroll down here to particles party T scene and close my parentheses. So now this should be a reference to that, and right here I'm going to say particle scene dot instance, and oh, I forgot to say var new particle equals, and this name is not important, it's just a variable name. But we need to set the position. However, I don't know where the target was clicked, so let's fix that real quick. So if I open up my target scene and I look at this function right here, I'm calling this method target clicked. So what I can do is right here I can say self dot, and so this will get this object, this target objects, and I'm going to use position. And so if you look up on the document, if you look up position, help if I could type. Well, actually, let's look up node 2D. So all node 2Ds have a position, and a position is just one of those vector 2's, which has an x and y coordinate, which is perfect. That's what we want. So I want to go back to the script. So self.position should give the x and y position of this target. Perfect. So now I'm passing it in. So on the main node, sorry, I'm switching around here a little bit, I need to add position right here. And so this will be that position that was passed in from the target. So all I need to do here is say new particle dot position equals POS from right here. All right. Oops, I just deleted that. And I need to do one last thing, and can you guess what that is? Yep, just like above, I need to add child and new particle, just like that. So assuming I didn't have any typos, let's see what happens when I do this. Nothing's happening. Alright. Well, let's see what's going on. So party, let's look at this lifespan. One thing, I didn't turn this on. I didn't turn it on one shot, and I didn't set the time. So those are all three things I needed to do. So that'll get done. This is not displaying, which has me a little bit worried. The one shot, when I turned the one shot on, I noticed that even when I turned it back off, it didn't come on. And the reason is this emitting turned off. Right? So when I turn this one shot on, yep, and then I save it, the emitting turns off. So let's just leave that on. Yeah, alright, let's try that. There we go. So that was my problem. My emitting flag had been turned off by turning the one shot on. So you could solve this if you really needed one or the other. You could solve this in two ways. You could do it in your code, and you could either turn emitting on when you created the particles. So I would do that by going to my main script, and right here where I'm creating it, I could say new particle dot emitting equals true, and let's look that up real quick to make sure I got the spelling right. So I'm going to look at the particle 2D class, and here's that setting right there, emitting. And so yep, so I just copy and pasted it directly from the documentation. The other way you could do it is also, if you needed the one shot, you could leave the emitting on and then turn the one shot on. So right here is the one shot property. It's one underscore shot. So you could use that as well and just set that in code. Alright, so there's CircleTap. So now I've got a game. It's mobile ready. I can tap it, I get scores, I hear sounds, and I see particles. So I think we're going to call this a success. Alright, I hope you followed along and enjoyed. Thanks for watching.